What's up, everyone? Welcome to BrandBusters. You got your hosts here, James Schwyn and Sean Lee. Got a lot to unpack. And in episode one, we crossing a couple topics here, ranging from e-commerce, fitness, life. But for this kind of origin story of sorts, a little background on me. So James Schwyn, sales director at Quartile right now. We're an e-commerce advertising software platform, work with over 5,000 customers, one of the major providers in the space, helping scale your ad dollars efficiently across channels and marketplaces. I have 10 years in sales and go-to-market experience across privately held, publicly traded, in a PE-backed environment. So I've known Sean for a long time and really excited to dig into this with him.
Yeah, it's great, James. Thanks for co-hosting this with me, and excited to dive in. But yeah, I'm Sean Lee, and my background's in CPG. I spent about a decade at Procter and Gamble, and then have led an Amazon agency, and now run my own company where we acquire direct-to-consumer brands and offer some pretty kick-ass 3PL and Amazon services. Company's called Cincy Brands, and James and I are here to talk CPG and ecom and shoot it to you straight. I think it's a great kind of background because my marketing's in background, or my background's in finance and marketing. James comes from the sales side, so we like to push each other, and we've always worked well together. So looking for some really engaging, fun, dynamic conversations here. So James, one of the first things I was seeing this week in the news, I've been seeing it on LinkedIn. I'm seeing people specifically in Europe talking about it, that Amazon Vendor Central is starting to stop buying low selling price items. So think, a single Old Spice deodorant or something under $10 from a lot of large vendors out there. What impact do you think that's going to have on the marketplace? And do you think more people shift to multi-packs or selling directly themselves? What do you think happens?
Um, what's the go-to consulting answer? It depends. I think what Amazon has that designation of crap, right? So cannot realize a profit. So no surprise here that they're trying to shed this. I think it will have some of impact here in the US, but again, what's the major implication here? I think if anything, everyone's trying to drive multi-packs and there's more margin there. And ultimately possibly take more control and go to 3P or try to straddle this hybrid model. So I don't know that's going to have this massive effect that is going to have brands and the big conglomerates like running and chasing and trying to change their approach. I think they're aware that they're not making money themselves on those individual units. They might be loss leaders already. But I think it will probably push some to rethink their strategy and their approach to the channel and other channels, frankly.
Yeah, I think it's a good approach for everybody involved, because I think Amazon squeezes the vendors on these low dollar price items to where they're not making any money. We know Amazon's not making any money when they're selling a $5 item and shipping it to the consumer prime. So I think it's the right move for the companies. I'm a little bit more concerned about consumers, because then Amazon starts to become more like a Sam's or Costco, and you're only pushing 2, 3, 4 packs. Like, what does that do to the volume? Maybe nothing, but does that start to become more problematic as consumers are stretched thin and have to shell out more dollars when buying from Amazon? Like, it actually might benefit your Walmarts, your Targets, and Krogers, where people can go back and just buy one $5 item if they need it.
So, fun fact, and you allude to this a little bit. So we actually worked together. I don't know if you know that we did work together once upon a time at
Did
an
we?
agency.
Yeah.
We did. We
I
did.
worked for you, right?
Yeah. No. You bailed me out and covered my ass. But one of the things that comes to mind here is for launches and for emerging brands, maybe less established, but one of the big concepts you drove was like, how can we drive trial and acquisition? So for a Tide, this is going to have no impact. But for a new to world brand concept, like me as a consumer, I don't want to buy a 5-pack of something if I just want to try you out. I need to try a single unit, figure out if I like this, and then I will double down if I have a great experience with the product and get multi-packs from there. So I think if anything, the emerging brands have to really consider what impact does this have on new to brand customer acquisition, which is what everyone's focused on, because that's the start of the customer journey to ultimately impacting LTV.
Yeah, I think that's super smart. I mean, the worst case scenario is if Amazon just becomes a channel for your loyal customers. Brands are going to need to get creative on what type of multi-packs they use. Maybe they sell some 3P that Amazon won't buy 1P. and just take a loss leader in selling that single unit. But I think it'll be interesting. And again, I haven't seen any news stories about this, but I'm just seeing people start to post about it on LinkedIn. And, I feel like it's coming, and it makes sense based on the crap list. And at Cincy Brands, we work with some large companies that sell to Amazon Vendor Central, and we're hearing similar things. So curious to see how this plays out, but I hope all our listeners can start thinking about it and figure out what their strategy should be.
Yeah.
So kind of moving on to the next portion this is our brand busting segment, which is why we created the show BrandBusters. So we're going to talk about a brand that's in the news or something that we've seen that's cool or interesting. And it seems like Solo Stove and Solo Brands are the talk of the town on Twitter and LinkedIn, maybe talked about too much. So what do you think, James? Was it fair for them to fire their CEO? And do we think that Snoop Dogg was a failure on this thing? Give us your take.
Well, frankly, this has me fired up, pun intended. I think it's too soon to call a dud or a success. I did some digging into this. I think a lot of people are willing to grab onto a headline and look at it at face value. But as we all know, the time horizon for any brand building or awareness play, you're not going to impact same quarter sales. You might,
Never.
but you're talking 6-12 month horizon, best case scenario. Plus, what if there's a seasonality to your product, which maybe I'm off base here, but if I'm thinking about like doing bonfires or hosting them in my backyard, Sean and I are both in Cincinnati, Ohio for everyone. So we're in the midst of gray and cold and freezing our asses off outside. I don't want to sit outside right now, but come summer and fall, like I would absolutely love to, grab one of those products and have. I don't want to just sit when I'm going to be, inside with my toddlers for the next couple of months. Going even deeper though, looking at John Maris, who I think really, I think he got a little bit, I don't know any of the nuances behind the scenes here, but maybe a little bit unfair. So John came on a couple of years ago. So get these numbers. 2018, 6 years ago now, Solo Stove was clearing 16 million. In 2020, that's 300 million. And in 2023, they're on pace to clear 500 million. So John Maris.
That sounds pretty damn good to me, James. I would love to have some numbers like that right now.
I would love to have those numbers, and I think so many companies would. So
I think the other kicker too is they're profitable. They're EBITDA positive, which a lot of primarily D2C brands are not.
Yeah. No, absolutely. The amount of money that's just being lit on fire by these other D2C brands that can't even, remotely touch that growth velocity. So again, I'm a little bit surprised that was the call. I don't know if there's any other dynamics at play there. But you and I both having been at the same kind of VC-backed company, and having been in a couple environments, I think one of the analogies I look at, whether it be a leader of a company or someone running in, you kind of fall into one of two buckets. So you have fire starters, and so 0 to 1, and fire stokers going from like 1 to N. And love that this analogy really plays in well to Solo Stove. But some people are just able to start something from scratch. They embrace the chaos, are able to insert infrastructure from their past experiences and really like rally, inspire people. And then others need to come into something that's already been built and then kind of help optimize and make sure it's stable and growing on a more consistent, pragmatic base. And very rarely do those two skill sets or like personas overlap. I think the other thing that you can see here is going from like founder to CEO. That's another type of, as the business becomes more mature. Now, John is not a founder. He came in after the fact, after they've moved up, but he absolutely grew this thing. And he lasted 5 years, average CEO, 10 years, 4.5 years. By all intents and purposes, I think John did a great job. I think people there calling this a miss are a little bit premature in their take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ad campaign was brilliant. I'm not sure what agency was involved in it, but I saw it everywhere. My wife and I saw it before they did the big unveil. Like, we were actually talking about it over dinner. We're like, here's Snoop Dogg's giving up smoking pot. And she's like, no way. And we were like looking at it. So it was very cool. Like, I think the hook got a ton of people engaged. I think the reveal was, it's kind of cheesy, but it played in with what Solo Stove does, which is a smokeless fire pit, right? So it's the perfect dramatization of that benefit for the brand. And I think they got like 50 or 60,000 new followers on social media. Again, probably a little bit of the wrong timing, like you said, doing it around Christmas time. Maybe it helped with gifting, but they didn't see a huge sales bump. And from what I read in a news release, it looks like over the past year, their EBITDA dropped to about 14% when they were expecting 18. So I think the CEO was kind of a scapegoat for a slowing economy. And, they were blaming extra ad spend on diluting their EBITDA margin, which if they weren't a publicly traded company, I don't think anybody would care whether you went from 18 to 14 and 500 million in sales, right? Because you're investing in building for the future. But I mean, we dealt with it when I was at Procter & Gamble. You really have to think in kind of quarters and like 12-month periods in your investment. And you get in these cycles where you may want to ramp up and beat a competitor by overspending an ad spend. That may pay off 6, 12, 18 months in the future, but you often get caught in a cycle if you just can't do that because you got to cut expenses to hit your Wall Street number or whatever. And you kind of get into this short-term thinking loop, which I suspect is what happened here. Because overall, I think the campaign was great. If you look at the overall outdoor space, I just saw that REI laid off a few people today, which is obviously terrible news. And they've had 4 quarters of quarter-on-quarter declines. So that tells me that the entire outdoor space is, slowing down or probably in a bit of a recession. So I don't think you can blame Snoop Dogg. I don't think you can blame the CEO for the broader macro trends. And I mean, frankly, I bought a Solo Stove when we were all locked down during COVID. How many other people did the same thing? So how many more Solo Stoves can you sell to people that didn't already do that? I think the jury's still out. I wouldn't be shocked if come springtime, this campaign has a benefit from them and the next CEO gets to take credit for it.
Yeah, no, you see that play out too often. And the one thing I'll say is you actually have to take bets, especially when you've reached a certain business maturation. And I'm all for brands taking a bold bet, especially on an awareness top of funnel stance, especially when you're talking about. I don't know what the addressable market is for Solo Stove, but I'd rather a company rally behind a bold bet like that versus let's take on a new ERP system or some new software, which may or may not get adopted. Is going to be boatload of money poured in from the consulting and the implementation to what really, at the end of the day, isn't really driving any major benefit. So I like the boldness of their approach in it. And again, like I said, I think this will be interesting to see play out over the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So shifting gears here, we don't just want to talk only brands and only e-commerce. We want to try to keep it interesting and share things, tips and tricks and things that James and I are doing in our lives that are interesting. So James, what's your fitness routine right now? I know you can probably bench like 500 pounds more than me, but what are you working on? What's hot for you?
Oh, what's hot for me? Not breaking down. So early 30s, had shoulder surgery a couple of years ago. And 2 kids. So Sean and I are both dads. We both have, full lives and families and sports and demands of the jobs to keep up with. So health and exercise, I think, are both, cornerstones for us in keeping us sane and being able to bring like the attention and energy to our jobs and our lives. My big thing right now is really focusing on strength building. So Jason Statham has this workout approach where he does 10 sets of 5 for his kind of primary lift. So if it's a deadlift, if it's a chin up, if it's a bench. So rather than doing 6 to 7 different exercises of 3 sets of 10, I'm really focused on kind of pushing that strength and more rest period. So I'm actually incorporating that right now. And I've seen a nice little uptick. I think I put on maybe 6 or 7 lbs in the last month or two. So some of that's maybe holiday food oriented.
I'd say that's probably all the cookies, right?
I make some damn good sugar cookies, let me tell you. And Girl Scout cookie season's coming up right now, which trefoils all the way. I'm the plain Jane guy, but damn, I will crush some trefoils. If I'm even saying that right. I don't even know if I'm saying that right, honestly, but all the way.
Yeah, and for me, I've kind of been all over the place. I've probably taken every rabbit hole and extreme. Like in college, I used to lift a ton, um, did protein shakes, weight gainer, all that. Early in my career, I got really into distance running and cycling, did marathons, 100-mile bike races through Death Valley. I've kind of taken every extreme possible. I think I overdid it on the running and got a little too lean, and some injuries brought me back to lifting. So now I think it's all about balance and efficiency, like you said. I think your program of focus on the core lifts that are going to touch most of your muscles is probably the best way to do it versus spending too much time doing everything else. I'm kind of right in the middle. I do a 4-day split. I do a Tuesday and Saturday push and a Thursday and Sunday pull, and about 5 exercises within each day. And then because I'm kind of putting a ton of demand on my body lifting, I don't do as much running. So I'll walk, a few times a week at a 12% incline at 3 miles an hour just to try to get my cardio going. So really get good zone 2 cardio. And then in the springtime when I can be outside, I'll try to do 1 day of sprinting where, I'll all out sprint for 30 seconds to a minute, rest for 2 minutes, and then repeat again for 8 to 10. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I think my goal is the same as you. Is I would go freaking insane if I didn't have my health and fitness base. If I don't work out, I'm worse with my family and worse at work. So I got to do it. I got to try to eat healthy. Both those two things keep me sharp and keep me good at home and keep me good at work. So curious to see. Hopefully the audience can learn something from that, and would be curious to, since we're live, if people want to share in the comments what works for you guys, because we're always trying to improve there.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Go
ahead. You go ahead. I'm going to run all over. Go.
No, you're good. I was just going to say, why don't we want to keep this thing short. We don't want to do an hour-long or 3-hour-long podcast. I don't think anybody has time for that. So quick hitting. What's next, James? What should people expect as we do this on a weekly basis?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. One, hopefully you're catching on that we're not so buttoned up and prescribed and academic about things. It's just two dudes that have known each other for probably 12, 13 years, worked together, been in a variety of environments. So these are our takes. We're not going to give a dissertation on anything, on any given brand or topic in life. So we're here to have fun. We're here to cover what's the latest in e-commerce and CPG and marketing, but also share a little bit behind the curtain in terms of what we're doing in our home lives, with our families, with our fitness, and just kind of what are we facing at any given time. So I want this to be relatable, approachable, and if you can glean anything or get a laugh, that's a win for us.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. We're super excited about doing this, and thanks for listening if you've already listened, and if you liked it, tell your friends about it. But like anything, we're also trying to do this to raise awareness for our companies. So like I said, I own a company called Cincy Brands. We acquire small, better for you brands in the personal care space, doing 2 to 10 million in revenue. So if you're looking to sell your brand and it's profitable, go to our website, cincybrands.com, and reach out to me.
Yeah, I want to point to you, but I point the wrong way. So sell to this guy, knows what he's doing. He'll be in great hands.
Perfect. Well, that should conclude our episode today. Thank you. And tune in next week for the BrandBusters episode 2.
Woo! Ready for it. Let's go.